The most misunderstood thing in the terms of the whole productivity niche, in my opinion, is deep work. It's just like saying that you went to bed for 8 hours and you spent 8 hours in bed. You're not going to sleep for 8 hours. You're probably going to sleep for something like 6 because it takes time to fall asleep. You probably wake up in the middle of the night. And when you wake up, let's be honest here, the first thing that you do isn't to get out of bed and get your day started. It's probably you doom scroll on TikTok or something like that. And it's the exact same with deep work, because once we sit down to our workstation, we kind of check on our messages. Oh shit, someone messaged us, gotta check that. Oh, I forgot to take a glass of water for myself, I gotta do that. 15 minutes later, you need to take a piss. And it's just an abomination. It's just a sorry excuse for work, what you usually do. And I don't mean to be too mean here, but that's really the reality of most people's daily routines. That's most people's lives, essentially, because most workspaces aren't conducive to deep work. Even in your private space, you're not going to be likely to work that much. But even in public spaces, like as you can see in the 2000s, these huge public co-working spaces that blew up in popularity, they're also very cancerous to deep work. And I'm going to explain why. What we're going to do in this episode is we're going to talk about the 4 deep work laws which changed my perception of work and made me much more productive than I was before. And these 4 are as follows. We're going to talk about some things that are bad. We're going to talk about something that is very, very productive that you probably didn't think of before. Something that should never, ever, ever be neglected. And something that is rather created than just randomly manifested, because a lot of people think that it just comes to you and it's fucking bullshit. So let's get started. The number one thing that is very, very bad and probably worse than you thought are distractions. Well, you already knew this. I'm not going to lie to you. This is quite a basic point, but it goes much deeper than it seems, because distractions you might have thought of previously as, oh, something happens in your day. Let's say this is the how focused you are. This is like the focused axis on a graph, and this is the time axis. Let's say you're focused, you're in the middle of work, you're almost at maximum productivity at the flow state, and then you get distracted, and then it plummets because you're looking at your message now. You get a message from your friend about something you're going to do later that day. And the thing is, when you're in such a flow state and when you're really, really like tunneled in on your task and doing that vigorously, the thing is, to get back to this state, it takes a fucking while, okay? So it's not just this 1 minute when you're actually replying to the text message, it's more like 15 if we add it up, because you're slowly going to have to work your way back up, and oops, she messages again, or he messages again, or whatever. But even if they don't message again, it takes time to go back up. And even if it does, here, let's say randomly, you're just going to be like, oh shit, I should have wrote something different to that guy. I should have replied with this different word, because I would be perceived in a better way if I did. Have they replied yet? These kind of triggers, these kind of distractions have like a ripple effect in your productivity. If you don't have your phone muted or in another room when you're working, you're going to think of this stuff because it is going to be top of mind now. Instead of your work being top of mind, and instead of you getting every single fleeting thought about your work, you're going to be thinking about this shit. And it has no space in your productivity. You probably thought that it was going to look something like this. Something like you get distracted and then right away after it goes back up and oh shit, now we're focused on work. But it's nowhere near like that. The reality is something entirely different, because what happens is you get distracted and then you have to work your way back up, and even if you do work your way back up successfully, you're probably going to drop it because of things like this. And most workspaces aren't conducive to work because they have so many distractions. The first biggest one is just not having your phone in your room while you work. Not even in your room. That's the best thing you can do. But if you do, for some reason, I mean, there really isn't any excuse in my opinion, but even if you do, for some reason, you're not going to get rid of your phone, you're going to keep it in your room for some reason, turn off notifications, please. There is no reason for notifications to be on. If it's urgent, they'll call you, they'll double dial you, and it will go through even if you're on Do Not Disturb. But really, like, there is no excuse for you to have notifications on in this day and age. It's just such an outdated concept in my opinion. But even if you do, just get your phone out of the fucking room, then at least take one of these less distraction fucking triggering things when it comes to your digital environment. The next thing is clean the fuck up around your room. If you have a bunch of stuff lying around, you have more stuff that your mind can use as a coping mechanism. You ever had an instance where you were procrastinating and where you were like, yeah, I'm not going to do the work because I'm going to do something productive instead, like clean my room or cook or something like that? The thing is, that's still procrastination. It's a form of procrastination which is a bit more productive in a sense, because we like conceptualize of it in a way where we are still doing something that's kind of useful, but it's never going to really like amount to anything if we're being honest. Like, you're never going to remember, oh, I cleaned up that day. Like, who the fuck cares? Your point was to work. So having these kind of pseudo tasks to latch onto when it's not really productive for you to do, like work, cook and stuff like that. I'm not saying you should never, I meant clean up and cook. I'm not saying you should never clean up and you should never cook, but like, these aren't the things that you should be using as an excuse because they're not productive. So you're going to procrastinate. And the next thing is, if you have just shit scattered around your room, you're just going to look at something and it's just going to be a visual cue for your mind to latch onto, because in deep work, Cal Newport, the author, actually says that having stuff randomly around your environment, like a picture on the wall even, can actually lead you down thought patterns which will get you distracted. So just like in this example, when we see a picture of our grandma and she's there and oh, look at her, she's so young and she's so, I don't know, lovely and everything, and we're looking at grandma and we're like, oh shit, we get distracted. Then we're like, maybe someone in the family tree. Oh yeah, our Auntie Anne. We should message our Auntie Anne because she wanted to get something from us a week ago, the family photo. Oh, I'm going to open my emails, and then your productive ego goes down, just like in this example. And it's like, that's one more thing for your mind to latch onto. Now, is this going to happen? Are we going to think about grandma and then Auntie Anne just like a bit later every single time we look at the picture? No. But the more cues you have around you, the more like visual or auditorial stimulus you have around you, the more things for your mind to latch onto, okay? This is like the more in-depth shit that all of these fucking ChatGPT ass advice videos aren't going to tell you. But all of these things, literally every excuse you have for your mind to latch onto is going to be something that will eventually get you distracted. So the best thing to do is to optimize your environment in a way where you have no triggers, essentially. The best way to do that is to work in a closet. Alex Hormozi does this. He works in like a 2 square meter room. It isn't entirely ideal, but you get used to it, and you're going to realize that if you have nothing else in there other than your computer, and even your digital environment is optimized, you don't have random games scattered around your desktop and stuff like that, you're going to find that you have no problem working. You're going to have no trouble with working, because if there's nothing else to do, I mean, what else are you going to do? Obviously nothing, because you have everything checked out. And the final thing, now we talked about elimination. We talked about elimination, getting these kind of stuff out of your environment and gone once and for all. But we're not going to talk about addition now, because adding things to your environment is also very important. Now you might think, wait, if we add things, that's just going to be more cues for my mind to latch onto and to get me distracted. Not entirely, because some things can cause you to be distracted if they are lacking in your environment. Let me explain. So have you ever sat down and you were like, fuck, I'm thirsty? And then you stand up and then you go into the kitchen and your roommate's there and you start chatting with him. And you were just thirsty, and that's the thing. So getting like a glass of water, for example, can be entirely like beneficial for you if you just do that before you fucking work. So you need to sit down and you need to think, why am I going to stand up? Do I have a conversation that I need to finish? Do I need a glass of water that I need to bring here? Am I going to be hungry? Do I need to eat first? Do I need to go to the toilet to take a piss? So it's all helping your future self. You need to sit down and you need to think. That's the guy standing up, but you get the point, whatever the fuck. You need to sit down and you need to think, what will lead me to get distracted in the future? You need to think of it, and then you need to go to the toilet, and then you need to fucking do whatever, man. Like get the glass of water, get the snack, and do whatever will lead you to get distracted, whether it's removing something, eliminating something from your environment in order to get around this and not get distracted, like in this scenario, and not lose 15 minutes of your focus, because again, it's not a 2-minute distraction, it's a 15-minute distraction because of this whole period here. And if you've done all of this, then what you need to do is add stuff, because if you don't have your environment set up correctly, you're also going to get distracted. The next concept we need to understand is how boredom is productive, because when we're bored, what ends up happening is we get the best ideas of our lives, because the default mode network, this part of our brain, is active. And what this part of our brain does is it gets our subconscious going and moving and thinking about the stuff that we've done in the day. And especially if our day is like consisting of non-degenerate things and we're doing good things and we're doing things that propel us forward in the future, then we're going to be thinking about things that help us, and we're going to end up getting ideas that might actually like lead to something good in our lives. A very good example is, I remember it was like, I don't remember which author it was, but many authors account that they were on walks and they were just in random places, and then they were getting these ideas. Then they were getting the best ideas of their lives. And some people have made like $1 million or $1 billion businesses out of these ideas. And the concept that what I was trying to get at is shower thoughts. You know how shower thoughts are a thing. You know how a bunch of people talk about, oh, I was in the shower and I had this crazy thought and it changed my life and shit like this. It's because in the shower you realistically can't really do much. Now, most phones are waterproof and some people like listen to music and take their phone even in there, which is like crazy to me. But most people, for the most part of history, haven't been able to do much in the shower. You just do your thing and then you just have time to yourself to think, to decompress and think about things that actually happen in your own life. And this is why having shower thoughts actually work, because this is the very, very few instances in your life when you have nothing to do. And this is when your default mode network is active and you're thinking about shit that actually happens to you and not just about external things like, oh, I have to do this task for my boss and now I'm thinking about that task. Or I have to cook food and I'm going to think about how I need to saute these onions. And yeah, sure, like thinking about these things is good. I'm not saying thinking is bad. But however, if you have time for yourself, that leads to things which will actually like come back into your real life and you will actually get ideas. And these ideas are very, very, very important to get. And another thing is, as I said before, you will only get good ideas if you understood the concept of dopamine history. Dopamine history, I didn't explicitly say this, but this is the next point I'm going to get onto, is incredibly important because when I was a video gamer and I was thinking about how to get the Fiora combo off as fast as possible in League of Legends, and I was thinking about how many turrets I have to put down with Heimerdinger to one-shot enemies once they walk into my bush, and just random geek shit, I mean, you can imagine what kind of thoughts I was getting. It was the stuff that I was doing. If I was playing video games, if I was eating junk food, if I was doing the bad things, this was what was on my mind. And this was the type of thoughts that my default mode network was coming up with. I was thinking about how to get this combo off as fast as possible. I was thinking about how many turrets I have to put down. I was thinking about the game, which didn't really lead me anywhere in life. It didn't transpire into actually go back into reality. This didn't exist. It was just, okay, I was getting these thoughts. What the fuck should I do with them? I can't sleep at night. So it's essentially useless. But if dopamine history was a concept that I understood back then it would have been entirely different, because if this is a graph of my dopamine and the dotted line is the baseline, that's pretty much like the average line of where my dopamine should be. And if I do, let's say, TikTok at the beginning of the day and it goes up extremely high and then it goes down, and then I like eat something which is kind of nice, and then let's say I read the book, you can see that these things are kind of low. Like reading a book is kind of like low dopamine. I'm just going to write a book icon here. And eating something, I'm just going to draw a fork and like a spoon. And this is also like kind of low dopamine. Maybe it's a bit higher because I'm eating like tasty food. And this is like TikTok. I think this is like the TikTok logo or some shit. And you can imagine which one my brain wants to do now. You can imagine which one my brain will have thoughts about, which one my brain will be pulled to. Because if this is the most enjoyable thing in my day, when I'm doing this, my brain will be like, what the fuck? Like, why are we doing this? Doesn't make any sense. Why would we do this if this thing is so easy and so rewarding over here? So you understand how if I'm not bored and I'm doing this shit, I will get ideas about this shit. But if I'm bored during this time and I'm not doing anything and my dopamine is on baseline, and this is the most important things, not only will I be pulled to do this and I will do more of this, but I will get better ideas about this thing because it's the most novel thing in my life. So not only will I want to do more of things, more of this, so I will actually want to work if working is the most important thing. Let's say if I'm not doing this, then I'll actually do this. Well, obviously in this case it will be eating, but let's say if I get even more dopamine from work, for this example, then I'll be wanting to do this. Sorry for the amount of arrows, but you understand that by now, I hope. The most dopaminergic thing is the one that we will be pulled to. That's why boredom is king, because if instead of doing things that would be higher dopamine than our work, if we just cut these shits out, then we will be pulled to the work. So that's the first point. And the second one is we will just genuinely think more about this stuff. Default mode network will be activated and it will be thinking about this stuff because this is what takes up most of our time. Since now we're not thinking about fucking TikTok and shit. Now all we're doing is just working and it's keeping our dopamine on a steady level. I mean, what else are we going to be thinking about? This is just working, and a few spikes here, it goes down a bit, and a few spikes up, and it goes down a bit. This is another graph of dopamine. As you can see, it doesn't really fluctuate that much, and it's a stable pool, as it should be, instead of fluctuating a bunch. And now my mind is going to be thinking about this. So genuinely, if you want to just do more of the good things, and get more ideas about the good things, just embrace boredom. Boredom is productive in these cases. You will get more ideas when you're bored, and you will be more pulled towards the good thing if you can just embrace being bored, embrace low dopamine activities, and tolerate these kind of not hyper-stimulated states in your life, because they are very, very, very tough nowadays. You see these pictures on the subways when everyone's on their phone, everyone's scrolling TikTok, everyone has some fucking food item in their hand, and no one can really just tolerate boredom nowadays. Everyone is on like this type of shit, TikTok. As I said, even they're taking their fucking phones into the shower. They're on TikTok while they're showering. I mean, can you imagine what kind of lives these people will lead? And do you want to be one of them? That's what you need to answer now. Because if you want these benefits of actually being pulled towards your work and getting better ideas when you're not working about your work, then you have to embrace boredom. It's instrumental. Number 3, routine is king. Now, when people think about working, it usually falls into just the rhythmic cycle of working. In the book Deep Work, the author Cal Newport, Cal Newport actually talks about multiple styles of working, and I think he talks about 4 styles, but 2 main styles, and those are rhythmic versus monaic. I think that's how you say it. I might be fucking wrong though. The point is, this is kind of monk mode-ish. So this is what most people conceptualize of as monk mode. And this goes into the, like, if this is like 24 hours, let's say, this is hour 0, this is 12, and this is 24. What most people look like is rhythmic. They work from 9 to 5. These are the hours that they work. And this is like 8 hours every day. So they have 8 hours work, and then the rest 16 hours is leisure usually. And what monaic work says, okay, we're going to have a bunch of these 24 hours blocks beside each other. But what we're going to do is, let's say this isn't just 24 hours, this is like 24 hours, but this is like, I don't know, a month, okay? So every single day for, let's say 3 months in a row, we're going to work from 8 in the morning to 8 at night, or fuck it, let's say even 10 at night, until 10. So this would be like hour 22, like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's going to be like a long fucking time, right? That's going to be 14 hours a day, or something stupid like that. And they're going to do this for 3 months. This is more like a monk mode protocol that we might be aware of, might be familiar with. And then what they're going to do is on month 4 and month 5 maybe even, they're not going to work. This is how it's going to look like, okay? No work at all. No work whatsoever. And why this kind of works and kind of doesn't, we'll get into that later, is because in this sense, our body will be aligned to this. Our body will get used to working at this time from 9 to 5. Every single day, every single day in our existence. Okay, some days we're going to take off, obviously, but it's in such a small time frame that we're kind of going to be used to this. Our body will actually learn about this time frame, and a thing called ultradian rhythm will step into place. So people think of the circadian rhythm as this body clock that we have. It will sense when it's nighttime, it will sense when it's daytime, and we will get the best sleep when it's nighttime because our body will sense it, and obviously if we get adapted to it, we sleep at the same time, that will be the best thing. Actually, the best thing for our sleep is to go to the sleep at the same time. Regularity is a very, very important factor. With that said, the ultradian rhythm actually exists, and it says that not only do we have a circadian rhythm, but this rhythm kind of keeps going around the day, and we have different 90-minute cycles when our hormones are at different levels. So this means not only melatonin, the sleepiness hormone, but I don't know every fucking hormone name, so I'm not going to write them out, but stuff like the stuff that gives you awareness, and stuff that gives you energy, like even hunger signals, and all of these other type of hormones can be cycled in the same way. And some of it is genetic, like there's some certain genes which make up your chronotype, etc., etc. But most of it can actually be learned. So if you tell your body every single day for a few months that you work from 9 to 5, it will learn. And it will pump you with hormones at that time. Now, another style he talks about is journalistic work, which is like a bit different. It's a little bit more flexible because, as you can imagine, journalists don't usually work at the same amount of time. But the thing is, your body doesn't entirely get adapted to this. So the more lenient and forgiving your schedule is, the worse you're going to perform. And I know that can sound controversial, and I know that a lot of people aren't going to be happy with that, but this is just how it is, because this ultradian rhythm thing, ultradian rhythm, this thing basically works in these cycles, and it will remember. And this is very important, and I had to write it down. So in this sense, what we're going to do is, this is a bit less optimized, because as you can imagine, we're not going to have like a heightened awareness for the whole window. We're not going to have heightened awareness. We're not going to have heightened energy for the whole 14 hours that we're going to be working for. That's just insane. Okay. So what's going to end up happening is we're just going to thug it out. Like, this is if researchers or experimenters or like high performance athletes, even high performance athletes, actually take time off. So as you can imagine, this is for like 0.01% of people. Like, this is why I genuinely hold the stance that monk mode is just bad. It's just not for most people. Most people aren't used to this. Because what Cal Newport says is that the maximum amount of deep work someone can put in a day, not total work, but deep work, when you're actually focused and you're actually taking these principles at hand, is about 4 hours. Now, this can go up to 6 hours if you're like an extreme person, and genuinely like 6 hours if you're in this cohort of people. If you're like George R.R. Martin, for example, someone who's like an established writer who writes a lot of time every single day. I mean, that guy's not fucking writing, is he? But bad example, but you understand my point. And but for most people, even for you watching this, it's probably somewhere around 1 to 3 hours actually. Because you have to train your focus. Focus is just like a muscle, just like anything else you would train in the gym. You have to train it because it's going to be like 1 to 3 hours only. And that's why this isn't usually that good. Now, if you have an experiment that you want to do, that you want to vigorously research, and you really, really want to do it, and etc., you have to spend a lot of time doing it, and you have to lock in shit. If your like situation actually requires you to do this, you can go with this Monaic approach and do the rhythm in your life in a sense where you work incredibly hard for 3 months, and then you take the next 2 months off or something like that. That also can work. But this 9 to 5 approach, believe it or not, is actually much better for the human body. Or even if you don't work 9 to 5, even if you have like a business which gives you flexibility, it is better just because of this reason to actually stick to a schedule and hold it up. I used to run an agency, and what ended up happening was I worked all over the place. I had a random deep work block here, I had a random deep work block here, and a random deep work block here, let's say. And then the next day, I didn't work. And then the next day, I had a random deep work block just in the middle of the day, but that was a bigger block. So it's a bit scuffed to this drawing, but I hope you understand that working all over the place will fuck up your rhythm, because your body will be like, wait, hold on, are we on the move? Are we like, or do we need to be stressed right now? Are we like, is our livelihood being attacked? Like, why the fuck are we changing so much? And that's exactly how your body will act in this sense. It will not be able to know that this is the time you want the energy, like the awareness, to be at the highest, because like a few days ago it was at this time, and it was at this time, and it was at this time. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense. So this is why a flexible schedule is really not that good for you, and also this isn't that good for you. So I really, bottom line, I just recommend this. And just quickly before we move on to the next point, be aware of this also. Be aware that you can only work maximum 4 hours. Now, that's not to say that you cannot work anymore, because shallow work does exist, and you do need to run some errands, like check some boxes and look at the Excel sheet and do like a bit of shallow task, maybe while you're talking to someone, maybe like that. You can actually multitask and get distracted and just do your stuff then. But for actual creative, focused work, when you're writing, when you're scripting, when you're doing something that actually requires your brain to be active and your neural pathways to be firing, you really don't want to get much more than 4 hours, especially if you're not trained at this, if you haven't been in the game and you haven't been working for like years and years on end, because it really doesn't make any sense. As you can imagine, people who are working in a 9 to 5 environment, I would argue that they get about 2 hours worth of deep work done every single day. And you might think that's incredibly low, but like, if you've seen people like this, and if you've been in a workplace like this before yourself, you know what I'm talking about. You know that people are on their phone, they're talking to their co-workers. If they're in home office, fuck, that's even worse, because they have random distractions coming in. They have this phone call they need to take. They need to cook lunch. They need to go shopping. They're just watching Facebook. They're taking a fucking break on Instagram Reels. It's never just an uninterrupted window of 8 hours of focused, solid work. So you're better off going with the approach that, okay, I'm just going to work 3 hours, but I'm going to close the fucking blinds, I'm going to remove the pictures from my wall, I'm going to eliminate every distraction, just like in point number 1, as we've established, and I'm actually going to take it to like a serious level. I'm going to keep it routine. I'm going to keep it at the same time every single day, so my ultradian rhythm knows what the fuck I'm talking about, and it will help me out. If you can actually manage to do this, and you can schedule your deep work blocks in a way where you actually stay consistent, and they are uninterrupted blocks of deep work or shallow work, as I said, you can work for more than 4 hours, but then you should like intend to do it on shallow tasks, or dedicate what task you're gonna do beforehand, then you should be fine. Like, there should be no problem. But the problem comes in when you're sort of scattered all over the place, or you're just simply overworking yourself, especially if you're untrained. If you're not a part of this serious cohort who've been doing it for years, who've like strengthened their muscle of attention, their ability to focus, and they really, really need to take some time off and go to their fucking cabin in the woods and work, just go with this approach, stay consistent, that's it. The final law of deep work, which will actually change your life, is that flow is created. We think of flow, we think of the muse, we think of this state that we get put into as just something that comes to us. A lot of writers talk about the muse, but even the best writers talk about the muse in a sense of discipline. I think it was Ray Bradbury in The Zen of Art of Writing, but it may have been Pressfield from The Art of War. No, The War of Art, sorry. It's the Sun Tzu, the other book. So it may have been either of these two. I can't fucking remember who said this quote, but some very like renowned author said the quote that the muse strikes every day sharp at 2 p.m. or some shit like that. That basically they were saying that the muse isn't something that just comes to you, it's an act of discipline. If you just wait around for the good idea to come to you, it will never come around. And that's very, very relatable to me, that every single time that I didn't discipline myself to sit down and actually start working, you just do random shit. And sure, like as I said, like you have shower thoughts, like good ideas can still come to you, but just waiting for it is such a less efficient tactic than actually getting into the flow in the first place. So the way we create flow is by making sure that we are in the channel of flow. This is a graph in the book of Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, where he has a axis on the y-axis, which is resembling the challenge level of the certain thing we're doing, and on the x-axis we have the skill level of the certain thing we're doing. And it says basically if there is a match between these two, meaning if I'm like a 2 out of 10 skilled on the thing and the challenge is like a 2 out of 10, or I'm like a 9 out of 10 on skills and the challenge is 9 out of 10, or somewhere in the middle, then and only then will I be able to be in the flow, and only then will I be able to actually like enjoy and be actually fully locked in on the task. Flow is like the state where you have no other fleeting thoughts in your mind. You're actually fully focused on what is at hand currently. And if like the challenge is much higher than your skill level, you will just enter a state of anxiety, and that's why a lot of these hustle culture bros fail, because they just throw themselves into the deep end and they end up drowning. And a lot of these like bitch ass mindset people also fail because they just end up getting bored and it's just stupid. So you need to find the like golden middle road, as the Stoics would say, and you need to find this path in the middle which actually enables you to be in flow, because if you're not, then you're just going to be cooked anyway. And the point I really want to make with this is if you actually nail this concept, which is a bit more commonly known concept, it's not only enough to find this for yourself, but you have to discipline yourself to do it every single day rigorously. Because as we established in the previous part of this video, in number 3, routine is very important. And if you don't routinely discipline yourself, you will not have this sense of flow. You will not be able to just step into a task and actually be enamored by it and actually like doing it. And if you don't like doing it, you will never do it. So though people think of discipline as this big word, discipline, the big word that's kind of scary because we kind of don't really want to do it, and it's kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of hustle culture-y and toxic masculinity, and I don't know, and it's a bit annoying. This is the ultimate form of self-love, I guess, because if you don't have this, you are like falling prey to instant gratification. The thing is, if you actually want to be like an artist and that you actually want to be creative in things, you still need to be disciplined. I had this thought that about 2 years ago, that I don't want to be like this manufacturer. You just make ChatGPT-ass content, make you like the boring stuff, because that's what I associated discipline with. That's what I associate this word with, like manufacturers and clocking it at the same time and doing the same thing. And it couldn't be further from the truth in a sense, because flow is only conducive when you are disciplined, when you do the same thing at the same time. First of all, because of the ultradian rhythm, as we said in the previous task, in the previous law, that if you don't do this, then you're just not going to be optimized as far as your body goes. But even on the other hand, like just having a disciplined schedule will help your mind also be in a creative flow, because that is how you will achieve a flow state. And that is how the muse will come to you, if you want to conceptualize of this. There is a very, very good reason why all of these writers, if they are in like a rut, if they are in like a state of writer's block, they are usually not in the disciplined area of their life. In the previous example, again, they very much are interlinked. We had this monaic approach where the person goes to a cabin and just grinds all day, every day. And that is also when they usually get a lot of things done. Even though I don't recommend you do this, and I don't recommend a lot of people do this, that is an approach which is entirely disciplined. And that is an approach where the muse will come to you eventually. That is an approach where you're not just sitting around waiting on your ass for good things to happen, because they won't if you don't make them happen. Again, this doesn't mean, and listen, this doesn't mean don't take breaks. This doesn't mean never ever, and again, this doesn't mean don't take breaks. Cal Newport doesn't say that you shouldn't take breaks. As a matter of fact, he says that you should only work for 4 hours a day. And for beginners, as a matter of fact, and again, this doesn't mean you shouldn't take breaks. Cal Newport is very adamant that you do take breaks, and he says that it's not actually that important to work long hours as you think. As we established, deep work is like a maximum of 4 hours a day, honestly, if you're actually doing it correctly. So the thing is, if you're working super long and super strenuous hours, you're going to get burnt out because your body is not used to it. We're not talking about burnout as in the human body is not capable of doing any more work. Like, if you're actually pushing the human body to an extreme, then you're probably doing something wrong, or that's usually not the type of like life people want to live. But you're pushing your body to an extreme if you're overworking yourself. If you're used to working 1 or 2 hours a day, because a lot of people are, trust me when I say this, because a lot of people don't get more work done, it's actually deep work, than 1 or 2 hours a day. If you try to go into an approach where you discipline yourself hard as fuck and you work 6 hours a day, like, you're going to get cooked within a week. You're going to get cooked and you're going to fail and you're going to hate yourself. So when I say discipline, I don't mean like sitting down at a desk all day, every day and working for fucking ever. I mean sitting down and doing a thing deeply with removing the distractions, following these 4 laws for a few hours a day. If you do that, and if you put that as your basic standard, if you do that as a non-negotiable, you do that every day, but just for a few hours, you will notice that your life is going to improve immeasurably. Because how many days have you had where you're just like, if I got these few tasks done, which can be done in like 2 to 3 hours, like max, like you don't usually, for the tasks for you to do and to say that this was a good day, you don't really need that much time. Like, what if you accomplished the bare minimum every single fucking day without excuse, without exception? Would you be like very, very happy with yourself? Would you be feeling like you're making progression to where you want to get to? Of course you would. So why don't you just make this a non-negotiable? And again, you don't need to discipline yourself all fucking day, every day. You just need to work in deep work, following these laws for a few hours. So now that you've got the tools, go and get it.